David Ghantt was an ordinary poor man, but he spent 16 hours a day surrounded by stacks of cash. Yet his own pockets were always empty. In reality, David was the supervisor of an armored truck for a security company called Loomis Fargo. His job was to transfer millions of dollars between banks. All day long, he protected other people's money, but his own salary was barely $8 an hour. How long could he keep crushing his dreams and hiding under the heavy blanket of honesty? One day, David finally grew tired of his honest life and started thinking about doing something wrong. This is the incredible story of the 1997 Loomis Fargo bank heist, a robbery so massive that it forced the FBI to launch an international manhunt. And this same story later became the foundation for the 2016 Hollywood movie Masterminds. Shockingly, David Ghantt himself even worked on the movie based on his own story. And unfortunately, he didn't receive a single dollar for it. Welcome once again to Nobel's Creation. Viewers, David Ghantt was a retired Gulf War soldier. He had once served and protected his country. Now, he worked for an armored car company called Loomis Fargo as a vault supervisor. In simple words, cash in his hands, empty pockets, and the heavy burden of family responsibilities on his shoulders. He worked 75 to 80 hours a week, but in return, he earned only $8.50 an hour. David Ghantt had become frustrated with his routine life. Loneliness and the sadness of never achieving anything big were slowly eating him alive from the inside. These circumstances created a strange restlessness inside David's heart, and eventually, dangerous thoughts began to grow in his mind. The moment dishonest thoughts entered David's heart, fate opened a dark new path before him. And the name of that path was Kelly Campbell. Kelly also worked at Loomis Fargo. She was sharp, bold, and mysterious. During their time at the company, she somehow became close friends with David. They often met after office hours as well. Their friendship became so deep that even after Kelly left the job, they continued meeting each other regularly. One day, Kelly introduced David to her friend Steve Chambers. Steve was a small-time criminal who always dreamed of getting rich quickly. When Steve learned that David was a supervisor for Loomis Fargo armored vehicles, a dangerous idea was born in his mind. The idea of robbing the money. But for the plan to work, David had to join them. That's when both of them started trying to convince David. David Ghantt, whose intentions were already beginning to weaken, found Steve Chambers' idea like a final push to a collapsing wall. At first, David was terrified, because until then, he had never committed a crime in his life. But Steve's manipulative style slowly pushed him toward the edge. He showed David dreams of luxury, wealth, and a carefree life. David's frustration with life, Kelly's support, and Steve's greed. All these things together pushed David to a point from where turning back became almost impossible. And then the planning for this master plan began. Now, Steve himself was only a petty criminal. Kelly had no experience, and David wasn't exactly a mastermind either. So naturally, their plan was so amateurish that any professional thief would probably laugh at it. The plan was very simple. On the night of October 4th, 1997, after work hours, David would stay inside the vault. He would disable the security cameras, steal the videotapes containing the recordings, and then load the company van with cash and disappear. According to the plan, after the robbery, David would immediately flee to Mexico with only $50,000. That amount was chosen because, at the time, it was the maximum amount legally allowed to cross the American border with. The rest of the stolen cash would stay with Steve Chambers, And after the investigation cooled down, David would return and the money would supposedly be divided equally among everyone. But there was one major problem. The plan had a massive flaw. David was taking all the risk and escaping to Mexico with only $50,000. So why would Steve later share the remaining millions with him? But greed had completely blinded David. He never even thought about it. And finally, that night arrived. On October 4th, 1997, at around 6 p.m., David sent the trainee staff home early. Now he was alone, fully responsible for the vault. Terrified and nervous, David entered the vault. According to the plan, he disabled 2 security cameras. He also removed the videotape containing all the recordings. But accidentally, he forgot to disable a 3rd hidden camera located in the corner of the vault. From that moment onward, this 3rd camera recorded every scene of the Loomis Fargo robbery for the next several hours. Completely unaware of this, David began taking cash out of the vault. But this time, he wasn't transporting counted money between banks. This time, he was trying to empty the entire vault, all at once and completely alone. Most of the money consisted of $20 bills. According to estimates, there were over 800,000 individual bills, more than 8,000 bundles of cash. Loading all those bundles into the van required a huge amount of time. For the next 2 hours, he kept loading cash into the vehicle. After stuffing nearly $17.3 million into the van, David unknowingly completed what became the 2nd largest cash robbery in American history at that time. Once all the money was loaded, David became so excited that he started dancing with joy. And that dance was also recorded by the 3rd hidden camera. The next morning, when other Loomis Fargo employees arrived and tried opening the vault, they discovered the keys were missing. The police were immediately called. Since David Ghantt was also missing from work, he instantly became the prime suspect. When investigators reviewed the security footage, all suspicion turned into certainty. And in the end, David's little dance only made things worse for him. The security footage also showed David repeatedly sending messages on his pager during the robbery. This proved he was definitely not working alone. Now, the police and FBI launched a search for David Ghantt and his accomplices. After searching the city for 2 days, FBI agents discovered the cash van abandoned in a forest. Inside the van, nearly $3 million in cash had been left behind, most likely because the money was too heavy and they were running out of time. The videotapes from both CCTV cameras were also found inside the van, which meant David and his partners still had around $14 million in stolen cash. Most of it consisted of unmarked $20 bills, meaning if they spent the money, it couldn't easily be traced. Meanwhile, David had already escaped to Mexico with his $50,000 according to the plan. He checked into a luxury beach resort and began living there comfortably. The police and FBI published advertisements in newspapers searching for David and his partners. They even announced a $500,000 reward for anyone providing useful information about the robbery. Police appealed to citizens to immediately report anyone around them who suddenly appeared to have a lot of money. Because of this campaign, the police started receiving countless phone calls every single day. Eventually, authorities had to create a separate desk dedicated specifically to the Loomis Fargo robbery investigation. Most of the calls were useless tips from people simply trying their luck. But among them was one phone call that completely changed the investigation. One man informed the police that his neighbor had suddenly become extremely wealthy. That neighbor was none other than Steve Chambers himself, the mastermind behind the entire plan. The FBI secretly began monitoring him. Investigators discovered that Steve couldn't control himself anymore. Together with his wife Michelle,
he had purchased a large, expensive house, a brand new BMW, and several other luxury items. When the FBI checked their bank accounts, they discovered huge cash deposits made shortly after October 4th. Their suspicions became even stronger when a bank teller revealed that the deposits were made entirely in $20 bills.
Michelle, who had deposited the cash, had even asked the teller how much money could be deposited without triggering a federal report. At this point, the FBI became certain that Steve Chambers and his wife Michelle were involved in helping David. But they stayed quiet because they wanted to identify the rest of the group, especially David himself. Only 10 days into the investigation, everything finally began unraveling completely. During one recorded conversation, the name David Ghantt immediately caught the FBI's attention. The call was between Steve Chambers and a man named Mike McKinney, and together, they were discussing a plan to murder David. Steve Chambers had become completely obsessed after seeing so much money. Just as the original plan's flaw suggested, Steve wanted David killed in Mexico so he could keep all the money for himself. The FBI quickly arrested Mike McKinney, who immediately confessed everything. Mike revealed that David was hiding in Mexico.
He also explained that after stealing the cash from Loomis Fargo, they had taken the van to the parking lot of Reynolds & Reynolds printing press. There, they transferred the cash into another vehicle. Shockingly, Steve actually worked at that printing press. He hadn't even thought about moving the money somewhere unknown and safer. Because they had very little time, too much cash, and a completely sloppy plan. That's why they left $3 million behind in the van and abandoned it in the forest. They didn't even bother driving the van far away. The forest was located right beside Steve's workplace and only a few kilometers away from the Loomis Fargo warehouse. In other words, within the first 10 days, the police and FBI had already identified almost the entire group. But authorities continued gathering solid evidence for the next 5 months. Finally, on March 1st, 1998, David Ghantt was arrested in Mexico. The next day, Steve Chambers, his wife Michelle, and Kelly Campbell were arrested in Charlotte, North Carolina. The FBI successfully recovered 88% of the stolen money. The remaining cash had already been wasted by Steve Chambers on luxury items. Steve Chambers was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and David Ghantt received a 7-year sentence. David was also held financially responsible for the missing $3 million that had disappeared, even though he never actually spent it himself. In 2016, a movie called Masterminds was made based on this story. The producers hired David Ghantt as a consultant for the film, but he received no salary. Because legally, any money earned by David would automatically go toward paying off his debt. At the time, David was working as a construction worker, and according to him, even if I work for the rest of my life, I still won't be able to repay this debt. Today, David Ghantt lives in Jacksonville, Florida with his wife and children. He still works in construction to support his family. He also maintains a presence on social media and often uses his story and mistakes to teach others valuable lessons. Hopefully, you'll also like and share this video. Thank you so much for your love and supportive comments. See you again in the next amazing video.